Raj, thank you for joining me today. Uh, really interested in talking to you a little bit about something that you presented at really recently at T3, about sort of really the future of technology,
Yeah.
and particularly one sliver of it, that is quantum computing,
Right.
which to me sounds like something straight out of Star Trek, but it's actually apparently not that far off. So tell me a little bit about what is quantum computing and why we should be paying attention to it, especially in wealth management.
Yeah. All right. So in the quantum computing space, and as far as the time horizon, I would say we're looking at 3 to 4 years out.
Yeah,
Which sounds like a long time, but we know how time flies.
that's
Yeah.
nothing.
It's
4
really
years from
nothing,
now,
yeah.
wow.
And quite honestly, it has already moved from the labs of the universities into the commercialized space and the research in that space. So Google obviously is a big proponent, IBM, big proponent.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of research being done. So when it comes, it's going to be just as drastic as the generative AI
yeah.
exposure that happened last year.
That's the same kind of path that went from University of Toronto, then to OpenAI, and then suddenly blowing up on the scene with ChatGPT, obviously being the first of many generative AIs now that we've seen since.
Yeah. And the chip industry is definitely ripe for an innovation. It's been doing a lot in the graphical processing unit space.
Right.
Now they're really going to take the next leap when it comes to quantum computing.
So, are we going to have a quantum computer in our home? Can you talk a little bit about that? What are we going to see first?
All right. So there are definitely going to be issues about having a quantum computer at home at this point, but you never know what holds in the future.
Right.
But as far as what is quantum computing, let's just talk about that for a
Yeah,
second.
sure, please.
Quantum computing is essentially computing at the subatomic level. When I say subatomic, I'm talking about like electrons or photons of an atom.
Right.
So this is a very, very small, low level,
Incredible.
right? It is, and as you said, it is very science fiction-like.
Yeah.
And there are certain things they always talk about. We're not going to get into it in too much detail, but it's like superposition, interference, and entanglement, which I love the most. I think it's the most fun part of the whole quantum computing space. But, so what's going to happen is those three things I just mentioned, they represent certain barriers to doing something at home right now, and essentially barriers that the industry is trying to tackle. Like, for instance, in order to deal with interference and decrease noise in the system, they bring the system down to an absolute zero Kelvin, or minus 450 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
And that kind of atmospheric setup is going to be very expensive until we know how to do this better. Right?
Yeah. So just to back up a second here. So we're talking about, as I understand it, the nature of how a computer understands commands, right? So we're moving from a binary system, right?
That is right.
Ones and zeros.
That is right.
To what you were talking about, electrons, which are, I guess, not just simply ones and zeros, but a range of...
That is right. That's right. Yeah, so instead of a binary bit, which is 1 and 0, which we did conveniently, it always helped us because we could understand things being turned on and off.
Right.
And we translated that to transistors, which eventually became the CPUs of today and the GPUs of today as well. Now what we have, instead of a bit, you're going to have a qubit.
Right.
And that's exactly what you just mentioned, which is something that can be a 0, it could be a 1, or it could be a spectrum. I mean, a probability of 0, probability of 1. What is interesting about this stuff is that, when we think binary is very deterministic.
Right.
Right? But nature, especially quantum mechanics, is not. There's the whole chaos aspects within quantum mechanics.
Right.
So the probability of certain things is not as straightforward. So using that to our benefit is, believe it or not, a way to go.
It's amazing that they decided to shift from that very determinative model to something that, like, how did they even get control of that? Like, how did they even come to decide that, we can actually kind of package this in a way in the computing power?
Yeah, it just, believe it or not, it goes back to Albert Einstein and his theories and what he spoke about. And he called it, and I'm going to butcher this, the spooky aspect.
The spooky science.
Yeah, spooky science. There's some word he came up with a sentence, and I'm messing it up there. But and it actually goes back to a lot of the stuff that they've been writing about for so long, which has been more theoretical. And now they're saying, well, let's take that and bring it into practice. So what's the next step in our journey here?
Right.
And now, we just have the technology to go there. Just like in generative AI, you had an innovation on the software side. You have this thing called transformers, and then someone built the infrastructure to enable this thing. So it's this confluence of events that occurred, and now we have these amazing solutions. So in the case of theory has been around for quite some time. Now we need the technology to sort of manage the theory to enable that, even the atmospheric requirements that we have.
Right.
And now we're talking about what the next steps are.
So I guess it won't, in some sense, we won't see it in the same way that, generative AI came on the scene right away. Everyone just started using it to like dictate emails and what have you. Just because of these enormous requirements, I guess gets rolled out a little different. Where do we see it first?
Yeah, so one of the places you're definitely going to see it first is those who invest a lot in the space. So all the Google and, the cloud-based entities like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they actually, if you go to their sites, you can actually look at like their options of working with quantum computing already. And I think they're very, very thin, if you will. But at the end of the day, all the cloud providers are aware of this revelation that's going to occur.
Yeah.
And they are preparing. And there are some security concerns here too. I don't know if you want to get into that, but like, there are things that we have to prepare for when this does occur.
Well, I'm assuming it's just like whatever they, you ever see in these movies about like, mass attack, like with these sophisticated AI kind of like machines just crashing through systems. So we're talking about some sort of an advanced level of computing that I guess makes current cybersecurity obsolete.
That is right. So currently our keys that we use for encryption is essentially 256 bits, right? And we use that number and that size essentially because we feel that it's safe and it's hard to crack.
Right.
Right. And of course, it provides for a good user experience, so it's not like it's too much of a load on the system.
Yeah.
But when we go down this path of quantum computing, then you're going to have keys that are much more sophisticated, first of all. So you are actually going to have safer situations.
Right.
But the problem becomes where now you suddenly have a quantum computer that can do so much more as far as trying to, hack into that key and essentially decrypt it. When that does happen, and the first entity does have a very successful quantum computer, all the current keys that we have out there, and I'm talking about everybody, all the keys are going to become defunct.
So the analogy that I'm going to try and draw here, I recently saw, I don't know, I go on, I'm on TikTok a lot, unfortunately, but my wife says, but, so they keep people start throwing these historic videos up. So I saw there was this historic video that they threw up. It was during World War II. So there was all these American fighter pilots, they're flying around. And then all of a sudden, it was the first time they ever saw a jet-powered German fighter that right?
That's a good analogy.
And so the radio was like, what the hell is that? Because the thing just like blew past them.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So it feels like, it's not like we have existing computers, but we're all sort of in those propeller kind of powered airplanes flying at a certain speed, and then suddenly, a jet craft coming out of nowhere, which is now the quantum computer, just kind of comes out and then really blows our minds in terms of what we understand computing to be.
And it'll be interesting to see if that actually happens.
Yeah.
If it's going to be that drastic of a change. Like, one of the things we kind of mentioned is interference. And, when you have that sort of noise in the systems, one thing they've thought about it to decrease the noise is use classical computing to help you to decrease the noise. So it may not be as drastic as that, but it does, as we know, these things do have massive leaps when they occur. And they're shocking to a certain extent. Right? It's just suddenly like, oh, it's suddenly here. And I think that analogy is pretty good because once you have that stable quantum computing solution that is robust, you will have something out of this world.
Well, I've talked to a lot of people about like 20 years from now, 20 years from now, because we've been here 20 years at T3, what's the next 20 years going to?
Yeah.
So 20 years from now, it's all going to be quantum computers then, probably.
Maybe. I mean, it's funny. I mentioned this before, like 20 years ago, did we ever think that we'd have a supercomputer in the palm of our hands?
Right.
And that's what we are all basically carrying around is a supercomputer. So will we have quantum computers at home in 20 years? Hard to say.
Yeah.
Hard to say.
Well, okay, so from a business side, I'm in a wealth management firm. I'm thinking about these things, AI, quantum computing. Yeah. How do I kind of prepare for these things, or how do I position myself as a business to take advantage of these things to hopefully give me a competitive advantage, as we go into the future?
Yeah, so obviously investment is very important here. If you do have, let's say, an on-premise solution, meaning you kind of roll your own in your own data center, you're going to have to prepare somehow, and that's going to be a difficult task. But just as far as application-wise goes, getting off of the legacy platforms, like we've spent a good amount this last year and the year prior to get off of our legacy platform on the CRM side, and now have everybody in the cloud. So I'm more comfortable in that space because of the fact that I know all these cloud providers are looking into that and researching it, and hopefully we'll be more prepared than the rest of us when it comes to this stuff. So I personally think that actually being in the cloud in this example is a good place to be. It's a very safe place to be. You know, one of the benefits you get from being fully cloud-based is that when technology does change, they have a tendency to adopt it very quickly and provide us the tools we need to, you know, leverage that change. So there's definitely an advantage to that in my mind.
I wonder, will the companies that are investing in quantum computing right now, do you see a business model where they're kind of like make quantum computing available through cloud? So you're basically accessing it without having to, you know, set up a quantum computer in your own
100%.
premise.
They're already doing that. So if you actually go to their sites, they'll actually say, hey, you want to try some and do some proof of concepts and so forth. So they're already in that process. So they're down that road. Yeah.
So then, at least for like the first couple of years, it'll be like that, right? Where firms are going, you know, having to go to the big firms that can afford these things and use it there. Do you see like the institutionals in our space kind of like trying to build that as well, or will they kind of rely on Amazon the way that they use it for AWS?
Yeah, well, you know, this is innovation at its best, and we know capitalism kind of drives a lot of this stuff. So it's like at the end of the day, if they can, they will make it, and if they can sell it, they will most definitely make it.
Yeah.
So yes, maybe it's the large industrial entities that have their on-premise data centers. Maybe there will be an entity out there that can help them to make sure that they don't get squashed by this this cycle. So it's hard to say, but yeah, I mean, my assumption is that things will work out better, but there will be a time where there's going to be a bit of a gap. Yeah. And my concern is that gap.
Yeah. And do you see like the firms that have access to that, like having a real competitive advantage? Like say, I have the ability to tap into quantum computing, and so my portfolio management is just going to be far better than yours.
Absolutely. Like, so a lot of the optimization space, portfolio optimization, risk management, complex asset pricing, or even if you're, like I mentioned, like if you're doing financial planning and you're doing, let's say, Monte Carlo, and you want to run 10,000 scenarios in the background, simulations in the background, you know, you could do that pretty quickly, and it would be instantaneous.
Wow.
And maybe real time is what the word I should use. Yeah. So it's very different than like what we do now, which is you run it, you wait a little while, you get back a result. You'll have to do it in real time. So there will be a definite advantage there. Taking advantage, I'm still kind of questioning how we're going to take advantage to it, because along with all infrastructure change is an application change. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that application changes have to occur.
Sounds like quantum computing will be bigger than AI in some degrees.
And it'll actually help AI. It'll actually pair with AI.
It'll supercharge it.
It'll supercharge AI. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's going to revolutionize the times. I mean, it is an exciting time to live. It really is. I mean, when you think about quantum computing and what goes on there, it's very much modeled like Mother Nature, right? Yeah. So, and at the quantum level, right? So you're talking about like how atoms work with each other and their connections, right? Right now we have trouble modeling things sometimes because it's complexity. So now you have a computer that is no longer based on a legacy concept of a 0 and a 1, because it was easy to turn a switch on and off, to something that matches more of Mother Nature.
Wow.
And now you have that, you know, you can model the world. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully we'll be around to see it, but we don't have computers that get quantum and realize that they can do stuff better than us, and then, you know, who knows. But, you know, all jokes aside, you know, always a pleasure to talk to you about this stuff, Raj. It's super fascinating. Thank you so much for spending some time to talk about this latest, greatest development in the tech space.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.